Okay. Well, we are halfway through, guys, and we're going to move into album number 4. Matt gets the first take, and he'll run the numbers for us.
Okay, so Slick Rick, I always like his name. Comes in at number 6. The Great Adventures of Slick Rick, I should say, comes in at number 677 in the 1980s on Best Ever Albums. Number 62 in 537 of all time. It is Slick Rick's highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, and Slick Rick comes in at number 2,756 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums, and again did not make Rolling Stone's list. So I think Slick Rick is somebody that I've known of, or I remember hearing the name. I don't remember hearing any songs. I couldn't have named you a Slick Rick song or a video that I saw growing up. So this was a pretty new listen for me. And overall, I did like this. This was a very my first take was that, okay, this is kind of like, I don't know, it's like old school rap, right? This is more of the earlier rap. This is more of the earlier sounding rap, like the Run DMC, kind of type rap, rather than more of the gangster rap that's kind of, or the rap that's kind of coming later on that would define the sound of the 90s. There's a very I was kind of getting like a slightly Fresh Prince vibe with this, because it's a lot of it's storytelling and taking on characters. So Slick Rick is
But
rapping as
explicit.
like, what's that?
But explicit.
Very explicit. Yes, I'm certainly going to get to that. But so Slick Rick is, a lot of this is like him telling stories and taking on the characters, some female, that you can clearly tell that he's being all these different characters and changing the sound of his voice to to inhabit the characters that he's written about. And it reminded me a little bit of, like, his rapping style reminded me of a little bit of the guy from Digital Underground. What's his name? That's the Humpty Dance guy. Whatever.
Shock G.
Shock G. Yes. Yeah. So I was getting that vibe, because this is a very playful album for the most part. It's kind of goofy. It's a little frat boy esque.
It's not PC anymore.
It is
that's for
certainly
sure.
not PC. There's some songs on here that I like. Indian Girl in particular was offensive on many levels.
When your first track is called "Treat Her Like a Prostitute," you
Treat
got to
Her
get
Like
a,
a- yeah.
and the last track is called "Lick the Balls."
Lick
like
the
you really,
Balls.
you have quite the bookends there for an
Yeah,
album.
you sure do. So some of this is hard. Like, some of these records are going to get hard because a lot of times I'll listen to them in various, different scenes. Sometimes it'll be just in my kitchen as I'm kind of just doing stuff in the kitchen. Sometimes it's at work, and I couldn't listen to this album in either one of those places with a 5-year-old in the house, and at work with trying to be respectable. So I'm gonna have to for records like this, I need to make sure I'm not able to listen to it as much, I guess, as I ordinarily would. So, but I really like the production of this a lot. I liked the a lot of the beats. I recognized Children's Story, and now I know where "This Is How We Do It" by Montel Jordan came from. And I also read that Slick Rick is one of the more sampled rappers, and I could see why, because there's a lot of cool stuff happening here, not just with the beats, but just the music behind it. Like, "The Ruler's Back" has a really catchy trumpet part, and I was like, man, if I knew this album back when I was in high school, I played the trumpet, I so would have learned that part and would have just played it like in rehearsal and stuff, because I just love that. It's just a really catchy thing that goes
Nerd.
really well with the beat. But yeah, so I like his flow. He's spitting a lot of words that very, very quickly. And it's just I think he's pretty good at what he does there. So yeah, overall I do like this, but again, it's kind of falling in that category of it's a hard album to listen to, because it's just got a lot of offensive lyrics, and more than just like dropping F-bombs and stuff like that. Like, it gets pretty sexually explicit. It gets pretty graphic in some areas. But that's just part of the deal, I guess. But yeah, for not having any knowledge of this at all, there's also some places like Teenage Love, I think, and was it, I don't know if it was Teacher or Hey Young World, but towards the end. So there's some more ballady songs in here, so there is a little bit of them. Yeah. It's not all just upbeat and songs like that. He does kind of go a little bit more ballad route, which I liked as well. Some of the synths that they're using. So I like a lot of the choice musically that they went with. It's just, yeah, it's like some of it's like a little cringe-worthy with some of the lyrics, though, that make it a little bit less, a little harder to listen to at times. But overall, it was a fun listen, and I would give it a thumbs up.
Yeah, it's hard. I like this album on some level, but I didn't like it as much as some of the other rap albums we've listened to, like Eric B and Rakim and EPMD and Public Enemy. I think there is it's weird because this is almost like a throwback album or of earlier in the 80s before we even it's almost like we moved past this in some ways in terms of where rap is at. But I guess the main strength of his is his storytelling ability, and these songs are very much like straight narratives almost, a lot of them, especially something like The Moment I Feared, about which is about a crime that took place or is taking place, and kind of the criminal and what happened throughout the course of a day, and then Children's Story, which is he has a really good ability to paint a picture with the stories for good and for bad in terms of explicitness and stuff. I would agree with you on the sampling. I caught some samples as well. The piano melody from The Ruler's Back, the Yin Yang Twins took that for a song of theirs. Nas, I think, took something from Hey Young World as well. And there's probably a bunch of other ones. Most of the tracks are. Oh, we didn't mention he has a British accent because he was born in Britain but raised in the Bronx. So I thought that
I didn't really. I was picking up more just like it sounded New York, like the way the walls, like the walls.
It's both. It's immersion.
Yeah,
it's an immersion of both. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So that's interesting. Stand out. There is some more party tracks on here, like Let's Get Crazy. So you still have that kind of feel of the being indebted to like a dance track, and like along with the slow songs and the narrative songs. So yeah, it's only him singing on every or rapping on every track. There's not really even like a DJ in some of the other duos or groups that we've had, where the DJs get a standout song. There's not really anything like that on here, and it's it's pretty good. I mean, it's vivid. It makes me laugh. It's very bawdy, and it is like a naughty, explicit children's book in some ways. So yeah, I guess mild thumbs up. It's not like my favorite rap album that we've listened to, but I think he's well loved by other rappers too, and so it was a fun listen.
Nas says it's one of his favorite albums, apparently.
Well, they have a lot in common, because if I made a list of best hip hop storytellers, like Nas and Slick Rick would be in the top 10 for sure. They both paint pictures, right? I put the storytellers are those two. When He Wants To, Eminem, Too Short, right, would be a top tier storyteller. Rakim, a lot of old school rappers have that element. I think of like Mobb Deep as really good storytellers in hip hop. So yeah, I mean, you can see the influence on Nas in terms of storytelling rap. There's also elements of the sample culture of hip hop that do share a little bit in common with West Coast artists. Like sometimes I have to remember that Slick Rick is a New York artist, because he has elements that feel a little bit West Coast at times with because he was sampled a fair amount by artists across all areas, I'd say. Yeah. But yeah, I it was funny when I was reading the bio, it was like Slick Rick was doing his thing, and then like Treat Him Like a Prostitute became a hit on the streets, which made me laugh because it's just they're like, but radio was reluctant to play it, so they decided to instead do the Al B. Shore song as the track instead, right? Which is like much more like I guess tame would be the best way to put it. One of the few tame songs. Most of these songs are unabashedly hedonistic, I'd say,
Yeah.
but with a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek nature to them, I would say.
Yeah.
In some of them, the way he, almost like a Britishness of, like the British always like sort of the bawdy story, right? And sometimes the bawdy story with a little bit, and sometimes no subtext, just text, like Benny Hill, like like a little, and there's a little bit of that here as well.
Or like a limerick, like one of those
Yes.
like bad, not bad, but
Naughty limericks.
explicit limericks.
Yes. And that's kind of what this is, exactly. So you're never quite sure when he's being serious and when he's not. And, even a song, it's funny when you say a song title, like, and you try to analyze it seriously, called Lick the Balls. But, like, you'd think it would be about, there's just something very funny about. And yes, and then I moved on to Lick the Balls. And, but yeah, that one you'd think it would be a sexual song, but no, it's really about him telling other like rappers to lick the balls is basically what it is. So he subverts the concept a little bit, I think, right there. But yeah, some of these songs are of their time, I would definitely say. Yeah, and but not in a way that made me cringe at the level that like the NWA album did, where it was like there's a real anger to this. I there's things where it's like, Slick Rick, but like you get the feeling that somebody would turn to him and like hit him and go, stop playing, you know what I mean, as opposed to like, I think this guy might really hate me, a little bit. Now I don't know, I can't believe I'm going to defend a song called Treat Her Like a Prostitute, but it's you'd think a song like that would be incredibly mean-spirited, but it ends up not being as mean-spirited as you think it is, because he's not telling you to kind of like treat them terribly. He's more just telling you to watch out for them, I think, is kind of like his message there, which is once again sort of an inversion on it. But yeah, he's also got the thing going for him where he spent most of the 90s in jail. And then came out and like had a return career. So he's got like kind of all the hallmarks, right? Of it was an assault. I'm pulling up the bio right now. Let's see. There was a shooting. So he was arrested after shooting at Mark Plummer, a cousin of his who had worked as his bodyguard. And he was let go for trying to extort money from him. So that was the deal. And then he shot at him and spent a fair amount of the 90s between bars before getting, from 91 to 97, and then came out and had a comeback album. I remember that comeback album because it came out when I was in college. And Slick Rick was played, I remember Children's Story being played as an old school track, right? Amongst hip hop mixes that I would hear quite a bit. So, I mean, he was on my radar for stuff like that, and I could definitely remember so that I'm so Ricky D, and stuff like that you just kind of just hear his voice in your head. But yeah, he's had a very interesting life. He the 2000s were also interesting for him. He got like he was kind of seized by the INS at one point, and they tried to deport him because of the previous charge back to England, but he really didn't have any ties to England, so it was a whole thing. And
he's only got 4 records. This last one was in 99. Yep. So
yeah, he's been sampled. I'm reading right here. He's been sampled by Kanye West, TLC, Eminem, Miley Cyrus, and many, many others. He made next to no money off of it too, because he was ahead of when artists got smarter about that, right? And still in that era when like George Clinton was like, sure, take my rap, hip hop's based on sharing, right? Yeah. So I think that might have bit him a little bit as well. So but yeah, I like this album. I would give this a thumbs up for sure. I agree that it doesn't rise to the level of EPMD or Eric B and Rakim, stuff like that, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was interesting, because like I said, it has that old school hip hop vibe to it, but to me it's a much more interesting sound than like what Run DMC was doing, which was a more sparse. I liked the Run DMC records, but they were much more minimalistic.
Way better too.
Well, but I'm talking musically, like because it's almost like a New Jack Swing kind of a element that's happening to an extent. So, but there's a lot more happening with other instruments aside from the beats, right? Whether it's the trumpet or it's a guitar or it's like a synth or something like that. There's more heft to it, right? There's more substance to the sound of the music. And then yes, added on top of that, there's the flow is yes, and then you add on top of that when he's rapping, there's a lot more happening as opposed to like earlier rap albums that were still in the same genre, same vein, but way more simplistic.
Well, it's also it's harder to, once upon a time in '94, as opposed to like, I'm the king of rock. There is no higher. Sucker right. MC. There's levels of degree of difficulty and complexity to rap. Not that it doesn't have its place, and I enjoy that just as much as anybody. But yeah, you're trending more to like Snoop than you are to like Run DMC at this point. And Slick Rick was a huge influence on Snoop, and it's not hard to figure that out. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lyric, a lilting quality to their rapping. That's the same.
I think Lottie Dottie was a Slick Rick song, if I remember right. Yeah.
That was his actually in the Check the Technique book. That was kind of his first big hit because he was with Dougie Fresh and the Get Fresh crew, and that song came out with them, and that was like a huge hit. But that was in like '84, and then this album didn't come out until '88. So
there's a lot of that stuff that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say there's a big gap between because he left them in like '85 or '6, I think, and then signed to Def Jam, but then the album didn't come out till '88.
Well, there's a lot of the stuff that like Eminem would do later too, with playing around with similar words all together in Lottie Dottie, right? Like Lottie Dottie, we like to party, we don't cause trouble, we don't harm nobody. It's that kind of that inverted rhyme scheme and inner rhyme and outer rhyme. So yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's I guess ultimately there's a playfulness to this album, and it's not really mean-spirited in the way that some other rapping is.
Yeah, there's definitely not the anger, right? It's everything. It is it's seemingly like very tongue-in-cheek. It's like I want to have fun, right? So. Yeah, even on his more serious like children's story, like even more serious songs are still kind of there's some sort of playful element. And it's almost like with his voice, like that's one of the gifts of his voice. I think is kind of like this. That's a playful element to his sound.
Yeah, I picture him as like a traveling minstrel, but like the one from like Monty Python or something, like just walking around rapping. That's kind of the vibe I get from this album.
Oh, and it looks like. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say I always group him together with Too Short to some degree too. I feel like they operated in the same lanes on opposite, all the way down to like similar cheeky, tales of the streets and sex, and then a weird like love song or social message song just thrown in randomly. Yeah. So yeah.
Are we covering Too Short?
We are not, but. Too Short telling cocktails. That's the thing. That's where we're there. Yeah, so.
Well, I was gonna say I wanted to look this up because I see in a lot of his pictures he's got an eye patch. I'm like, is that like a style thing? And no, I guess he went blind in his right eye after being injured from like a shard of glass as a toddler or something like that. So that was a lifelong injury I guess he had.
Yeah, it's part of his look too, definitely.
Okay. Right. Two left,
also,
guys.
I'm sorry. Also, Rolling. You look at Wikipedia; they have the reviews here. So, Rolling Stone album guide gave this 4 stars, and Rolling Stone gave it 2 stars. So, consistency from Rolling Stone. Thank you very much.
I bet you the original reviews like, I don't think this hip hop's built to last for forever. Yeah. I think pretty soon they'll be back. Yeah. So.